What's happening, crypto fam? You're tuned in to the Elite Wealth Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of crushing it in the Web3 and cryptocurrency space. I'm Tyler Brewer, alongside the co-host Garrison Rolley, and since 2016, we've been educating, enriching, and empowering hundreds of students across the globe on how to make waves and create generational wealth in this space.
Each episode, Tyler and I keep it real with you, analyzing the top market movers and industry leaders, the latest news, and how to avoid the potholes on the road to crypto riches. We're industry vets who have guided students over 500% gains in this wild 2024 market.
If you're a rookie crypto trader or a seasoned investor, you're in the right hands. We will teach you how to level up your mindset and skills to really capitalize on this decentralized revolution.
Subscribe now and join us every week as we lead you step by step into elite digital wealth with the Elite Wealth Podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 3, the history and origins of Bitcoin. What is cryptocurrency? This is part 1. This is a longer podcast. We want to go in depth and cover some great things. I'm here today with Garrison, the co-host. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, fam? Glad to be here tonight. Like Tyler said, this is going to be a good one. We got a lot of information to cover. So like Tyler said, this is part 1. Make sure you're here for part 2. So
Absolutely. So I want to start this off with what is cryptocurrency, right? Because we're covering the history and origins of Bitcoin. So I think it's only right that we cover what is cryptocurrency, because if you don't know what cryptocurrency is, Bitcoin is one of the first. So guys, cryptocurrency is a digital money, right? But the fact that money is digital isn't new. Money has been made widely digital since the 1990s. So money being digital isn't the new concept. The new concept is money can't be printed whenever you want. There's a lot more to it. We'll cover in probably part 2 of this episode. But for now, guys, we're going to dive into the history of Bitcoin. So Garrison, I just want to cover, a little bit of the monetary systems. And then after that, we can kind of move into the cypherpunk movement. But really the history of the monetary system is a little important because, right, we've covered it a little more in depth in previous podcasts, but we started off really with the gold standard. Then we went to the gold exchange standard. Then we went to the Bretton Woods system. And then we're in the legacy system where digital currency became about, right? So let's go back in time and see where Bitcoin started with the cypherpunk movement. Garrison, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the cypherpunk movement?
yeah, I can do that. So what it was a movement in the 1990s, like Tyler said, advocated for the use of cryptography and privacy enhancing technologies. They wanted to get away from the third party in simple terms. They were pioneers, in my opinion. They were a movement, it was influential movement advocating widespread use of strong cryptography. I just said that, but um, as a route to social and political change. It emerged in the 90s, like I said. It was just a group of people trying to get to a new system. They were, like when you're in a college and stuff, people are always at colleges trying to evolve things, figure out the evolution of, whatever they want. And things are always advancing. But one thing that hasn't advanced much is the monetary system. So these guys were basically the pioneers trying to find a new system, and we'll get into it, but basically led us down to the road in Bitcoin.
Yeah, honestly, 100%, bro. The In simple terms, the cypherpunk movement and who they were a group of the activists, cryptographers, programmers, and really other people who were interested in using cryptography as a tool to bring about the societal change, like Garrison talked about, the monetary system, right? They wanted to take away really the third party and give the power back to the people. So, Garrison, why do you think this movement was so important and detrimental? And like think about today's time, right? Why is that important in today's time? Back then, people might have questioned why it was a movement. Why do you think that's important now, bro?
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't really realize like the personal privacy that you get from, actually owning your money and things like that. They were advocates for personal privacy, which everybody wants. We don't really have much privacy, They're listening they're listening to us through the phones. You can probably see it. Yep, you see it scanning you right now. They're doing everything. So it's really hard to get privacy, and blockchain it does that in an extent. It is viewable to all the public, but it's it's safe, it's secure, you know where everything's going. So like just like we can't lie and where I sent my money, the government's not going to be able to lie when they sent their money from here to here because everybody's going to be able to see that. But anti-censorship views and opposition to institutional control over information and communication, that was another, they're trying to do that. There was a belief that widespread cryptography would equalize power between individuals and institutions, like we talked about. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that movement was important, like you said, bro, because it realistically it brought about some change in the monetary system, something that we hadn't seen in such a long time. Like, we were
exactly.
really looking for that movement. And now when you look in today's time, when in the last 3 years, almost 90% of all money that's been printed has been in the last 3 years. Then you look at the inflation rates in the last 3 years, they're up 25% or more. So
Wow.
in today's time, I think it's a lot more important because nobody was worried about it. Even now, it seems like nobody's really even worried about it now. But these cypherpunks, ultimately, we're in the beginning of this, right? They were the like you said, Garrison, the pioneers of this evolution of change of money,
Yeah.
of what we were using. And like you said, they were. It was all about the anti-censorship of the views and the opposition, right? In today's time, we see whether it's true or not. You don't know whether it's factual or not, right? That right. Nobody knows whether the election between Trump and Biden was actually inflicted upon, right? It's just which side do you believe? Nobody knows for sure. And that's
Exactly.
where a lot of this comes from. So when you think in today's time where a lot of this stuff that they were thinking about back then, we're 20, 30 years later, 40 years later almost, and some of that stuff is just now starting to get implemented. So yeah, bro, I think it's really detrimental because it's finally 50 years, 40 years later, we're finally just beginning to realize like, okay, now you can see the shifting really start to happen and the financial impact of today's markets.
Yeah, and yeah, they were in simple terms, I know we kind of said it, but they were a group of people who wanted to take the trusted third party away, give it back to us. And it's kind of why the US, why we came across the ocean over here in the first place. So, um the
Yeah.
cypherpunks, they were all doing experiments. Like I said, they're figuring out what's working. There was a few failed attempts like Hash Cash or BitGold, B Money, and there's a few more. But I guess the question I want to ask you, Tyler, why does this really matter to Bitcoin? Like, what does cypherpunks have anything to do with Bitcoin?
Well, bro, I mean, they were like you said, we kind of said it without saying it, but they were the original pioneers of changing the monetary system. They saw the errors and the flaws that we had in it, where
Yeah,
even now, you're right, the average person spends 100,000 hours working for money, but they don't even understand how to hold money, store money, multiply money, how to make more money without getting another job. So, this matters to Bitcoin, bro. The cypherpunk movement matters to Bitcoin because they were the pioneers who led us to it. They were the pioneers who gave us this realistically, right? They the trial and errors, the stuff that we didn't have to do. We're kind of just reaping the rewards of all the hard work that they did early on.
exactly. Yeah, no, and it was at that time it was probably scary to be working on a new monetary system because we'll get to it later, like, they didn't want this pushed out there. They didn't
Yeah.
want this to happen.
And actually, there was I won't cover it too much in this one. Maybe in part two we can go in more depth on it. But there was actually a certain time where there was code illegal. There was certain code
Oh,
that was illegal
wow.
into money. So like they were actually kind of pushing the U.S. government and the feds. They would make shirts with the coding on the shirts, and they were pushing them, bro. They were kind of instigating them. They're like, "Is this legal? Is this illegal? Can we put the code on the shirts because the coding is illegal according to you? So is it illegal now that we put it on the shirts or the hoodies or the merch, right?" So it's crazy, bro, because at a certain time the code was illegal. They were trying to make it
Yeah.
illegal. Ultimately, there was no stopping it, man. And that's again, right? The third parties. They wanted to take away the power from the third parties, the system, right, and give it back to all the people.
Yeah. No, and that's like I said, that's exactly why, what do they say? Christopher Columbus came across the ocean to get away from taxes and, things like that, to get away from a third party. And then we just came over here and pretty much created our own. But this isn't a history lesson here today. It is on Bitcoin, but we're not going to go that far back.
Right.
Um, So I think that pretty much covers everything for the cypherpunks. I don't
Yeah, bro.
think I have anything else to add. Should we move over to the white papers?
Yeah, bro. I think, from the cypherpunks, right? Obviously, they kind of led us to Bitcoin, which in 2009, technically, January 3rd, 2009, excuse me, was the exact day, right? The Genesis block. But before that, right, we had the white paper, we had the working before it, the pioneers of the space. But yeah, like you said, bro, that kind of leads us to Bitcoin in 2008. And in 2008, we also had other problems. Forget about Bitcoin, but the financial market was in shambles,
Yeah.
right? Housing market was crashing. We had the subprime loans that were garbage, right? They were pretty much the banks were selling these loans and to people saying they were good, and in the background they're like, get rid of these things, they're bad. So, these people, the pioneers, the cypherpunks, ultimately seen that, and a lot of these cypherpunks uh were actually part of, right? A lot of these cypherpunks who worked on, or the people who worked on Bitcoin were cypherpunks, right, from the mailing list. So
Yeah.
Garrison, if you want to cover, bro, like, right, what is a white paper? Because most people hear the word white paper and they're thinking like, oh, it's
Yeah, like it's a white paper.
yeah,
Um, no, so a white paper, it's in crypto, it's a document that communicates crucial information related to a blockchain project. It is a comprehensive guide that explains the purpose, technology, and the goals of the project. So the white paper is typically written by the project's development team or core members, the founders and stuff like that too, obviously, and serves as a guide for potential investors, miners, and users. Um, you know, when you buy something, you want to know what your money is going to be used for. So basically, the white paper is just telling you how the project works, how it's going to work on the blockchain, and what they're going to do with your investment.
yeah, bro. It ultimately just tells you what's going on with the project. In simple terms, the white paper pretty much tells you exactly how the project works, the coding works, what it does, if there's any things that will affect your holdings, right? Like in Bitcoin, it's the Bitcoin halving. But
Right.
it tells you all about those things, everything about the coding itself, the token, right? What matters about it. So in this episode specifically, we won't be covering a lot of the in-depth stuff that they wrote on the white paper. That will be more on the part two side of things, but ultimately that again, that white paper was created as if you read the white paper, really, it's just they cover how they created an encryption-based protocol. They utilized a ledger called a blockchain, right? And we'll cover a little bit more of these words, right? These definitions. We'll kind of define what they are. That way, most people, if you're new, you understand what it is. But ultimately, allowed for this Bitcoin, right? The white paper tells how it allows for many kinds of transactions to occur, contracts, and other things that can actually be built on the blockchain. And it does this through a consensus, really a consensus network, right? And where it utilizes multiple computers and they all participate to manage the blockchain's ledger. So in modern day technology, right? In modern day technology, like banking, regular companies, all their information is stored on one ledger. They're stored on one ledger, meaning there's one point of attack. With
Right.
Bitcoin, in the blockchain specifically that Bitcoin uses, it's a digital document that keeps track of all the payments and it controls the money and supply by a computer. That's all. So the key point is that it's a distributed ledger, that there's no central server, right? There's no central server. There's no one point of access like there is like when you've seen JP Morgan get hacked, or you look at Home Depot and Target. There's a lot of these companies that have gotten hacked because all their information is stored on one central server.
Yeah, and the one thing I wanted to cover really quick is um like Bitcoin, like how secure it is, and so like Bitcoin's the most secure computer network in the world, and basically this is going to explain how Tyler said there's one point of attack for banks and the companies that he just covered. But Bitcoin and the blockchain, it's secured based on a computer power. There are about 420 exahash, which again we'll cover that. That's basically the hash rate that every computer on the earth would generate is 420 exahash. Probably a little bit less actually. So this is I'm getting this I learned this from Michael Saylor. So So it's all the computer power on Earth because the mining rigs are generating um 2000 times more efficiently than a normal CPU. And there are these massive Bitcoin centers all over the world. So there's not one point of attack. These things are placed all over, and it's backed by raw computer power and raw electric power, about 12.5 gigawatts. That's actually all the power of the US Navy and a bit more and a bit more actually power than the Navy and its propulsion system. So you have to have a massive amount of electrical power driving a massive amount of computing power, and these two things combined create a very secure network that is virtually unhackable because you have to take over the Bitcoin network, you need a lot of computing power, a lot more than 420 exahash. And like I said, that's the amount of exahash that's on the world. You'd probably need two worlds two of the exact same worlds to hack or, block the Bitcoin network. So, like we said, this, it's something that couldn't really be stopped. And now it's, they're kind of realizing that it has to be adopted and pushed into society somehow because it's not going to go away. And now you see, they're finally getting their hands on it.
Facts, man. Yeah, and really, when you study and start breaking it down, right? The average person works 100,000 hours for money, but the average person doesn't spend 100 hours studying what money is, right? We said that before, but when you really start to study money, Bitcoin, and see why it's so important, right? And we'll cover a lot of this information in the part two of this, but once we break it down for you, you'll understand why it's so important. Right? Like Garrison said, you need two worlds worth of power in order to hack the entire system, right? You could take down my miner, you could take down Garrison's miner, you could take down a whole entity's miner. But guess what? Somebody's still mining over there. There's still a group mining over there. So there's no one point of attack.
Yeah,
And it's,
there's hundreds, if not thousands. There's
yeah,
probably
man.
thousands of mining facilities around the world.
Right.
Definitely.
So, and ultimately, right. So what this white paper did is it explains what Bitcoin is, but in January 3rd was really when the Genesis block occurred, right? January 3rd, 2009. That was kind of rhyme. But January 3rd, 2009 is when the Genesis block occurred. And what actually is the Genesis block? Well, there's a lot of things that we'll face, right? So talking about the initial mining efforts, first transactions, we'll talk about some challenges faced, but we want to start with the first transaction, right? We want to
Yeah.
start with the first thing. So the birth of Bitcoin. Satoshi, right? He made away, he gave it away, and it disappeared and went away, right? So, guys, Bitcoin was introduced in 2008 by an anonymous person or group, right? It's either an entity or a single person, which realistically, it's a group of people who helped program the code. When you break it down, there really wasn't one person who did this. The whole
Yeah.
cypherpunk, right? A lot of these cypherpunks, the group of people who helped work on Bitcoin and the ultimately really the experiments they had before that helped create Bitcoin. So when I think of Satoshi Nakamoto, I really think of the cypherpunks in general, and specifically the people who helped code Bitcoin. But in
Yeah, I'd
2000,
consider like them a group. I consider Satoshi Nakamoto now like a group of people.
yeah, bro. I don't necessarily, even if there was one person who initially launched it, it's not like it
Yeah,
was only,
because
right?
like we said, multiple people had to fail trying to do the same thing, which all
Yeah,
led to, making it even better. And then we got Bitcoin.
facts, man.
So
So
keep going. So
2008.
when was the first Bitcoin mined?
So, well, 2008, we had the white paper was released, and then January
Right.
3rd, 2009, was the first Bitcoin block. It was known as the Genesis block, and there was a
Okay.
reason why it's important. But ultimately, in this Genesis block, it was pretty much a documentation, right? Because it's immutable. What does immutable mean? It can't be destroyed. It can't be taken away. It can't be altered. So there was an embedded message actually within this Genesis block, and that message actually reads. It says inside its Coinbase parameters, which is pretty much a special field for the miners to insert a little bit of data or words, whatever they want. But the message reads, in quotes, it says the time is January 3rd, 2009. And then what they did is assuming, right, because there wasn't as much detail, but we're assuming this is actually a header from the Times Post. It says the chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. And if you Google that, you can actually find the article on that exact day where it happened. And you can read the article. But that message is really widely to believe, or it's widely believed to be in reference to that headline from the Times newspaper. So again, Garrison, that Genesis block was important because realistically, bro, it documented, right? It was immutable. It says,
Right.
hey, before nothing happened before this date. We might have created it, but this is ultimately the day the first transaction happened. This is it. This is the first block. It's first transactions. And maybe we should cover a little bit more why it was important, right? Why is it important? The time stamping, right? We went over the
Yeah.
time stamping. He embedded the message. Satoshi Nakamoto effectively timestamped the Genesis block when he put the exact date on there, right? The timestamp serves as a unique and an immutable reference point that the entire of really the entire Bitcoin blockchain.
Yeah, so that's pretty symbolic because like Tyler said, it's interpreted as a critique of the traditional financial system and motivation for the creation of Bitcoin as a decentralized and trustless alternative to fiat currencies and central banking. So it highlights the timing of Bitcoin's inception amid the global financial crisis. Like the markets were crashing at the time, like 2009. I'm sure if you ask your parents, or if you're a young person, go ask your parents like what happened in 2008. They're gonna tell you it was a rough time. Um, and yeah, it was immutable. So like all blocks in the Bitcoin blockchain, it's not gonna be altered or tampered. So Bitcoin, it provides proof that nothing has been created before January 3rd, 2009.
Yeah, bro. And ultimately, right, with Bitcoin's coding, any attempt to actually modify any of that contents would actually invalidate anything. Like it would be rejected by the whole network, right? Everybody would have to agree upon that, and then it would happen. Otherwise, it would be rejected. It would be denied. So yeah, bro, what was really the historical importance of the Genesis block? Ultimately, it held the historical value, the foundation of the Bitcoin blockchain, and the starting point of the cryptocurrency revolution. Ultimately, what you said in the beginning, right? Monetary system change, which is what we needed. And it ultimately represents the birth of Bitcoin and the new beginning of an era of decentralized digital currencies and blockchain technology. Although blockchain technology isn't new at this in 2009, it was being utilized with currency, which was new.
Right. Yeah, blockchain's not, it's been around since the 90s pretty much. Like the cypherpunks, they were that's exactly what they were trying to use back then. So, um I guess we'll dig into like some of the like initial mining efforts and the first trans well we kind of just no, we didn't go over the first transaction. So let's start at the mining effort. So in early days, mining Bitcoin was relatively easy and it could be done on like a regular, ordinary personal computer. And Satoshi Nakamoto and a small group of early enthusiasts were responsible for mining the first Bitcoin blocks, like we just talked about, and validating their initial transactions. The first few years saw Bitcoin mining as a hobby activity, with miners contributing computing power to support their network and earn newly created Bitcoins as a reward. So you're basically giving the Bitcoin network access to your internet and access to your computing power to, help move along the processes. So, um, yeah,
Yeah,
so
bro. In the early days, a lot of people might not have seen it as something serious, right? Because at that time,
right,
before this first transaction, it was more like a concept. It was just kind of an idea, but it was a circulating idea. The idea was out there to be grasped at, right? You could actually grab the idea, but until more people grabbed the idea, it was just an idea. And those people mining, right, in the early beginnings, it was easy to mine because it didn't require a lot of power, number one. Number two, you were rewarded a lot more Bitcoin, right? In today's time, I want to say it's like 3.125 per block reward. Don't quote me on that. I have that
which it
up.
just, yeah, no, I think you're right because the halving just happened, so it went
Yep,
down from, 6.5 or whatever down to that.
yep. But yeah, so I think mining in the early days was a little bit different because it was easier. Now it requires a
Yeah,
little bit more power with inflation. The price of electricity has gone up, but
yeah,
ultimately, Bitcoin is digital economic power is really what it is. So, which again leads us kind of that, we're mining, but in order to mine, what is a miner? A miner is ultimately somebody who's validating these transactions, but they're also solving complex computer algorithms in order to get more Bitcoin, right? They're pretty much printing. That's the printing of Bitcoin, is the computing, the pretty much completing these complex algorithms, right? When they complete them, they're technically printing more money, but they have to work. They have to prove that they did all the work, give the work. Everybody has to agree to it. Boom, blocks confirmed. Bam, they're rewarded the 50 Bitcoin. But that is technically the printing, them getting rewarded. And then in order for them to make money, right, they need to sell some of that Bitcoin. They need to sell some of it in order to pay for the power that it costs to mine it. But again, that leads us to the first transactions, really where Bitcoin had its immaculate conception.
Yeah, so this is the first day that I guess that really gave Bitcoin value. Um,
Which was the pizza day, but I guess technically there were first transactions before it, but yeah, 100%, bro.
so yeah, the first Bitcoin transaction was made on January 12th, 2009, when Satoshi Nakamoto sent 10 Bitcoins to Hale Finney, a computer scientist and early Bitcoin supporter. So I'm assuming Hale Finney probably was one of the cypherpunks. I'm not exactly, don't quote me on that,
Yeah,
but
he was on the mailing list.
okay, so yeah, he was definitely helping out, and Satoshi wanted to award him with 10 Bitcoin. Now, on May 22nd, 2010, this was, like I said, one of the first, this went pretty mainstream. Like this, like someone got a pizza for Bitcoin. Yeah, May 22nd, 2010. I don't know how to say this guy's name, so not even gonna attempt it. He's a programmer, made the first real world transaction using Bitcoin, purchasing two Papa John's pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin, a transaction now celebrated as Bitcoin Pizza Day. So
Which
somebody,
was, sorry, go ahead.
so yeah, somebody, I think, I don't know what country he was in, but someone's like, I want a pizza. Someone send me Bitcoin. And so this person, um, he got the address, sent them the pizza, and then once he got the pizza, he sent over the Bitcoin, and it was 10,000 Bitcoin. Guys,
Yeah,
that
bro.
is a
And
lot of money
today's
in today's money.
Yeah, today's money, that's worth, let's see, there's one, two, three, one, two, three. That's $662 million. Well, probably one of the most expensive pizzas, two pizzas in the entire world were the Bitcoin pizzas. But yeah, that first transaction was the Immaculate Conception, because when you look at money in general, right? Money in general, right? Fiat money. Fiat is a Latin word for force, to let be done. And it's a decree, it's a legislation passed by a central organization. So when you look at Bitcoin's Immaculate Conception, it was a day that people, not the system, people gave something else value other than money, right? They gave Bitcoin value as a digital currency, right? Although Bitcoin today is better as a digital property, as a digital gold than it is a digital currency, because most of us probably don't want to spend our Bitcoin. But ultimately, yeah, no, that pizza day, the Bitcoin pizza day, really was the immaculate conception of Bitcoin. And yeah, those two Papa John's pizzas, they're probably like, but Buddy's probably hurt. Was that Laszlo? Hey,
Yeah, like
I
I said, I
can't
don't
think of
know
his
how to
last
say his
name.
name.
Right.
Um, but yeah, no, that's the thing about Bitcoin. Nothing like you're never gonna be spending, in 2020 you might have spent, 3 or 4 Bitcoin on a house. Now oh, I should probably say like 6 or 8 Bitcoin on a house. And now you're maybe spending like 4 or 5 because as Bitcoin price goes up, people are gonna need less Bitcoin. So,
Yeah,
so
bro.
there's
And
that.
I think that leads us back to, right, the early years and really gaining traction and acceptance for Bitcoin, right? So we had the first transaction, which was really the immaculate conception of Bitcoin. But that brings us back to really the early years of Bitcoin, the where not many people were accepting of it, right? Actually, most people don't even know this, but where the New York Stock Exchange sits, there was actually a Bitcoin exchange, a physical exchange in New York, right down the street. It might have been across the street or down the street from the New York Stock Exchange. So,
Yeah.
in the early years, there was honestly, a lot of challenges and adversities that they hit, but Bitcoin faced a lot of significant questions, challenges, that, really gaining that widespread adoption. Like, what is it, a security? Is it a commodity? Like, what is Bitcoin, right? The lack of central authority the anonymity, I think I'm saying that word right, of the creator raised concerns, right? And people, specifically the mainstream media, created a lot of these concerns on purpose, in my opinion, because they saw the fear of the change in monetary systems where they benefited off it, right? Benefited off the inflation, benefited off the printing, benefited off the entire system itself, where the Bitcoin, the new monetary system of Bitcoin, actually takes away, like the cypherpunks wanted, takes away the third party system and gives all of the power back to the people, right? So those early adopters and enthusiasts played really a crucial role in promoting Bitcoin. The Eric Hughes, the Eric Vorhead. I'm thinking, I know I'm mispronouncing some of these guys' names, but there's a lot of amazing people in those early days that that played a really crucial role in promoting Bitcoin and getting us to where we're at now. And as more people began to understand and appreciate the potential decentralized digital currency, Bitcoin gradually gained traction. And as more people learn about money, it's only natural that they start to become more attracted to Bitcoin, because when you understand what money is, you understand how powerful Bitcoin is because
Right.
of the hardness of its money and really
Yeah, you can't just print more.
deflationary aspect. Exactly, bro.
So, and another, this kind of backtracks a little bit, but I did want to bring this up really quick. Like,
Yeah,
I remember back, well, I guess I don't really remember, but like people were saying, I remember when the Fed was like 2% inflation a year is good. Like people were okay with that. Guys, 2%, if you're losing 2% of your value a year in 100 years, say bye to your money. Like you're using
100
two,
transactions.
yeah,
Say goodbye.
100 transactions even. Yeah.
Yep.
So 2% inflation, they were highlighting the bare minimum. They weren't actually, they're pretty much just kicking the can down the street. They were making it seem like a good option. And then again, that's pretty much like what led the cypherpunks. But that, like I said, that kind of backtracks, but I've been thinking about that and I wanted to bring that up. But anyway, like some other of the challenges that Bitcoin had was like the volatility in Bitcoin's value and concerns about like security breaches, hacking, and things like that, because nobody really understood it. And the government painted a picture that it was for scammers and drug dealers. You're gonna have your bad apples no matter what. So one of the bad apples that was created was Silk Road. You guys might have heard of it. It was a website made for drugs where people would buy with Bitcoin. In October of 2013, that founder, Ross Ulbright, um, he got arrested on 7 charges, indecisive for, yeah, 7 charges, indecisive and money laundering. So he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. So they painted the image that that's what Bitcoin was used for. And in reality, they probably only caught this guy because it was on the blockchain. Like they
Yeah,
probably wouldn't have caught him if he was just, selling drugs in US dollars, like because
yeah,
they're
bro. He
not
was,
tracking that.
yeah, if he was using US dollars, he's been safe.
Yeah.
But honestly, bro, I think a lot of these challenges, and really a lot of these, it's mainstream media that painted this picture that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general was bad. It created this
Right.
thing saying, hey, you don't want to do this, right? They raised concerns about energy consumption when in reality, the energy consumption of a lot of other things is more than Bitcoin. It's not realistic. Like, when you put into perspective, which again, most people don't even study 100 hours to study what money is, but then they're just going to automatically assume and trust the mainstream media, right? There was regulatory uncertainty, the legal, the legality issues surrounding Bitcoin, right, poses challenges, and the mainstream media painted this as like a big picture, right? And Garrison said, right, he was talking about Silk Road, that they painted this picture that Bitcoin was used only to buy drugs, right? But it's crazy because before Bitcoin was ever created, what was being used to, what was El Chapo using for drugs? What were these drug lords using, right? They weren't
Huh.
using Bitcoin. They were
Was it
using
it was US
fiat
dollar,
currency.
right?
Exactly, bro. That's why it was so hard to catch them.
Yeah.
Like you said, bro, because it wasn't on the blockchain. They were using cash. They were using stuff they could burn. El Chapo, I think it was El Chapo was actually burning money. I think it was either him or Pablo Escobar. I think it was Pablo Escobar. But ultimately, these guys were using fiat currency. And in what you were saying, Garrison, right? So the founder of Silk Road, he got sent to prison. But that following year in 2014, the government auctioned off 13.5 million of Silk Road's confiscated Bitcoin, and the first live Bitcoin exchange happened on Wall Street. So,
So they ended
um,
up making money from it.
exactly, bro. And so they sold this thing that they painted a negative picture for. And then you have BitInstant CEO Charlie Shrem, which he was another pioneer of the space, right? He was a big guy that was really an advocate for Bitcoin and really helped propel Bitcoin. And he actually got arrested for alleged money laundering. So imagine this, right? Garrison's a bank. I need money from my bank, but I'm a crackhead. And I'm gonna go, he knows that I'm a crackhead and I'm gonna get this money and I use his bank to go buy crack, right? Everybody, what did Pablo Escobar use? US dollars, right? So meaning any bank that has US dollars, they know that sometimes that money is being used for drugs. Charlie Shrem spent 2 years in prison because of that same thing, because his companies just sold Bitcoin. They didn't do sell anything illegal. They sold Bitcoin to somebody who went and used the Bitcoin on Silk Road.
Yeah.
So
And
he got caught, right? So imagine the bank. He's the bank in this situation. Charlie Shrem was the bank. He sold Bitcoin to somebody. Somebody else used the Bitcoin for illegal purposes, and Charlie Shrem he ultimately was the one who faced the penalties for it.
and the day after he actually got arrested, there was a Bitcoin hearing held in New York to find a proposed regulatory framework.
Yeah.
So
And actually,
he
that
actually, my bad. I'll go with this real quick. He faced up to 20 years, but he had to plead guilty to only get those 2 years. Because I don't know if you know, guys, if you guys know anything about the law system, but usually if you fight the case, they're gonna give you the maximum penalty. So if he fought it and didn't win, he would have got 20 years. And at that time, you're not really gonna win a case like that. So he just took the 2 years. But yeah,
Yeah, and at that time, bro, I told you guys that there was the physical Bitcoin exchange. Well, that hearing changed everything and actually ended up led to the shutting down of the physical Bitcoin exchange. So, there's a lot more to it, obviously, of things that held Bitcoin back. The mainstream media really ultimately painting the negative pictures with this, saying it was used for drugs, bad things, illegal activities was a major thing that held back mainstream adoption only because they couldn't figure out a way how to utilize it as a tool themselves first. So they wanted to paint this negative picture that nobody should be using it because it's bad before they figured out how to use it to make money from it.
yeah. There's one other thing. I know we don't have a lot of time here, but there's one other thing. FTX is like a more recent one. I'm sure you guys have probably heard about it. He was working like a bank. He was spending money that he didn't have, and eventually the exchange crashed because people found out. And you're always going to have those bad apples, but in this space right now, they're constantly highlighting them and painting a good picture that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is used for scammers and frauds. With that being said, guys, I think I don't have anything else to say. Tyler, I don't know about you, but we have a lot
That's
more to
it.
say in part two. Catch us in part two next time. Appreciate you guys. Peace.
Peace, guys.